We'll get them running, and we'll bring them to justice.
Mr. Bush was reunited with Vice President Dick Cheney. The two have been separated for a couple of days for security reasons. The status reports the president got from his advisors varied from Attorney General Ashcroft's assertion that his investigation is having reasonable success to Secretary of State Powell's more enthusiastic report.
We're receiving expressions of support from around the world, and not just rhetorical support, but real support for whatever may lay ahead.
Pakistan's military leader met with the U.S. ambassador earlier this week, and Powell says General Musharraf was especially forthcoming. Pakistan's the closest thing to a U.S. ally on the border with Afghanistan, where bin Laden is based. But U.S. officials won't confirm reports Musharraf's agreed to accept a multinational force. Defense Secretary Rumsfeld says America's military will be up to the task when it's needed, which the president suggested might not be long.
My message is for everybody who wears the uniform, get ready. The United States will do what it takes to win this war.
And for the first time, Mr. Bush named Osama bin Laden as the prime suspect in the attack.
And if he thinks he can hide and run from the United States and our allies, he will be sorely mistaken.
Aides say the president isn't neglecting other concerns, but has focused his administration on the war against terrorism. He used his weekly radio address to try and focus the country.
You will be asked for your patience, for the conflict will not be short. You will be asked for resolve, for the conflict will not be easy. You will be asked for your strength, because the course to victory may be long.
Or for those individuals who are still buried in the rubble, there's 600,000 tons of debris in New York City. I visited the Pentagon this morning, came back from New York City this afternoon. I visited the Pentagon this afternoon after I arrived. And it's a much smaller situation, even though it's just as serious at the Pentagon, and moving a little bit quicker there. But both situations, and even the one in Pennsylvania, very, very serious.
And a hint of what is to come.
My message is for everybody who wears the uniform, get ready. The United States will do what it takes to win this war. And I ask patience to the American people.
The Pentagon is expected to start calling up at least 35,000 reserves soon. And the White House says it has not ruled out the use of ground troops. On the diplomatic front, the White House says its international coalition against terrorism is getting stronger.
It's a coalition that will stay intact, that will be built upon over time, and what we have to do is not just go after these perpetrators and those who gave them haven, but the whole curse of terrorism that is upon the face of the earth.
The administration has been working Pakistan very hard. Secretary of State Powell says Pakistan has effectively pledged its soil and airspace to the U.S. in a potential assault on neighboring Afghanistan. Afghanistan's ruling Taliban government has warned Pakistan not to cooperate with the U.S.
We have friendship with Pakistan, and it is not expected from an Islamic country like Pakistan to allow attack on an Islamic country like Afghanistan.
Taliban officials say the U.S. has blamed the attacks on Osama bin Laden as an excuse to attack Afghanistan. Today, Afghans prepared for possible action. Many fled the capital city of Kabul. And in response, Iran has shut down its borders with Afghanistan to prevent refugees from entering the country.
Many others in the history books. It's when Andrew Card, the White House Chief of Staff, whispers something to the president, and you see his expression change, become grave, become very beclouded with a sense of emotion. I'm going to tell you right now exactly what Andy Card said to the president when he leaned over. Now, you must understand, at this time, the president is already aware that one jet airliner has crashed into one tower of the World Trade Center. Andy Card said, a second plane hit the other tower, and America's under attack. We learned that only yesterday when Andy Card, the White House Chief of Staff, told that to pool reporters traveling with the president to New York City. Andy Card described it as a surreal moment. Absolutely. Aaron?
Well, that's some picture to look at. What you can't know, I suppose, is what you can't know is what was going on in the president's mind at that point. Here's a guy who was a major, here's a guy who was 8 months or so into his term, and all of a sudden, sitting in a schoolroom in Florida, confronted with an extraordinary piece of information and an extraordinary challenge. And surely he knew in that moment that his administration, his presidency, that he himself were forever changed.
Changed forever, the world possibly changed forever. And it's worth pointing out this, Aaron, I think. At that moment, this president found himself in a position no other U.S. president had ever found himself, understanding that an act of war had been committed against American civilians. We can think about the grave moments many other U.S. presidents have had to deal with. President Lincoln receiving the horrific dispatches from Fredericksburg, Shiloh, Gettysburg. Perhaps FDR learning of the death toll at D-Day. Harry Truman learning of the death toll in Korea as the Army had to move backward almost to the southern end of the peninsula against the Chinese. Lyndon Johnson going through the daily death count in Vietnam. All of those presidents coping with the real tragedy of American service personnel dying. But at that moment, this president knew he was dealing with civilians who had been attacked and had at that time had no conception of how grave, how serious, how numerous the casualties would be. But he became a very unique American president at that moment.
You did indeed. One quick policy matter. The president talked about the coalition. You mentioned the coalition. Is there in fact a coalition? And by that I mean not just people saying we're going to help, but the kind of coalition that we saw in the Persian Gulf War, where there were clear commitments. People were making resource commitments that you could actually see, not just words, but things you could actually see.
Well, that is exactly the effort that the administration is going through now. Senior administration officials describe it as a you are either for us or you are against us moment for all of the world. And roll will be called only once, we have been told, and you will either be with us or against us. And when, for example, in the case of Pakistan, there have been times before where there had been these sort of airy words of support, but nothing definitive. Pakistani airspace is definitive, very much so. You'll recall that in 1998, when President Clinton had to fire cruise missiles into Afghanistan, the United States was denied Pakistani airspace and also denied Pakistani human intelligence, which might have been very valuable in pinning down the precise location of Osama bin Laden. Both things have now been offered up to the United States, as well as efforts throughout Pakistan to control the border with Afghanistan, tangible assets now provided to the United States government. Is it a real coalition? Does it have all the definitive qualities the United States now wants and now expects to have? Not quite yet, but the administration is clearly moving in that direction.
Whether or not we declare war, war has been declared upon us here in the United States. We have taken the worst that terrorists have to offer. Now we will show them the very best that America has to give.
New York's going to be rebuilt stronger than ever before out of the blood and the sweat of our heroes.
What we have to do is not just go after these perpetrators and those who gave them haven, but the whole curse of terrorism that is upon the face of the earth.
A group of barbarians have declared war on the American people. My message is for everybody who wears the uniform, get ready. The United States will do what it takes to win this war. If he thinks he can hide and run from the United States and our allies, he will be sorely mistaken. Underneath our tears is the strong determination of America to win this war. And we will win it.
A live view of the lower Manhattan skyline, the smoke continuing to drift off the rubble that was the World Trade Center. And even as we speak, they are lifting a fire truck out of the wreckage, and they are moving closer into the wreckage, pulling more pieces away, still listening for signs of life, still listening for signs of hope. And there it is, a New York City fire truck, one of the many destroyed when the buildings came tumbling down. This live picture being lifted by a heavy crane out of the way, opening up more room for rescuers and searchers to continue their look.
making the nation proud. And may God bless America.
This recovery operation is an exceedingly dangerous operation, and the men and women who are involved in it are very brave people and entitled to, the admiration and respect of all of us.
Do you ever think of maybe not being a fireman anymore?
No, Mr. King, I will always be a fireman here in New York City, protecting the people of New York and my friends.
Our colleague Peter Viles put that together with the help of the staff photographers of Associated Press. There's extraordinary power in a still photo, and if you ever doubted that, I can't imagine you do anymore, nor can I imagine that anyone in this city will ever look at New York's bravest the same again, or at least for a while.
Linda, it's unclear whether the president and his advisors have knocked off for the night, but their council of war will continue on Sunday. They spent the day making battle plans at a presidential retreat known more for its peace talks. But Mr. Bush says we are at war. He says the principal suspect in Tuesday's attack is Osama bin Laden, that he and the others involved have stirred the might of the American people. And just as his father did a decade ago, George W. Bush has drawn a line in the sand.
This act will not stand. We will find those who did it. We will smoke them out of their holes. We will get them running, and we'll bring them to justice. We will not only deal with those who dare attack America, we will deal with those who harbor them and feed them and house them. Make no mistake about it. Underneath our tears is the strong determination of America to win this war. And we will win it.
Aides kept their plans secret, but they did have some things to say to the American people. Attorney General Ashcroft claimed some success in his investigation. Secretary of State Colin Powell says he's pleased by the world response, not just rhetorical support, he says, but real support for what lies ahead. Powell's aides won't confirm reports that Pakistan has agreed to host a multinational force which would go after bin Laden in Afghanistan across the border, but the president suggests it may not be long before Pakistan's approval is needed.
My message is for everybody who wears the uniform, get ready. The United States will do what it takes to win this war. And I ask patience to the American people.
Of tomorrow morning's New York Post. If you can just see that, what you see on your screen, very simple. It's something we're all getting prepared for.